Section 1. Setting the stage. The sun was just beginning to rise, washing the quiet neighborhood in pale gold. My backyard was still damp with morning dew, the grass cool under bare feet. Buddy, my dog, was already at the edge of the fence, his tail swishing slowly from side to side. To most people, it was just another wooden fence, weathered planks standing like tired soldiers. But to Buddy it was a border, a line he seemed to think about far more than I understood. Buddy wasn't an ordinary dog. I'd had him for 3 years, ever since the day he trotted up to my porch, ribs showing, eyes bright with hope. He'd stayed, and in those years he became my shadow, a silent confidant when I didn't feel like speaking, a reason to smile when life was heavy. He had a way of tilting his head as if listening to more than my words, as if he understood the weight behind them. Our mornings were always the same. I'd sip coffee, and Buddy would patrol the yard, nose to the ground, tail up like a flag. But lately he'd grown distracted. His patrol stopped short at the back fence, his attention fixed beyond the slats. It wasn't just casual curiosity, it was focus, the kind you see in working dogs on the scent of something important. First I thought it was squirrels. We had plenty darting across the trees that lined the property. But when I called him back, he'd hesitate, his body rigid, as if something in those woods demanded he stay and watch. His ears twitched toward sounds I couldn't hear. Once, in the stillness of early morning, I thought I caught it too. A faint rustle, a low, drawn-out note in the air, almost like a whistle. The neighbors had been talking. Whispers about missing cats, overturned trash bins, and strange tracks found in the dirt. A few even claimed they'd seen shadows moving in the trees at night, too large to be stray dogs, too quick to be anything else. I'd brushed it off. Every neighborhood had its share of ghost stories. But Buddy seemed to know better. One evening, as I brought him inside, I noticed his paws were muddy, though it hadn't rained. His fur smelled faintly metallic, like wet iron. When I asked him where he'd been, a habit of mine as if he'd answer, he only looked toward the fence, ears pricked, then padded quietly to his bed. That morning the air was heavy, the kind of stillness that makes you hold your breath without realizing. Buddy stood at the same spot by the fence, his stance low, alert. I followed his gaze, staring into the shadows between the trees, but saw nothing. Still, something about the way his tail stopped moving made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I didn't know it then, but whatever lay beyond that fence was about to change everything. Section 2. The Incident. The next morning, fog rolled in thick and pale, shrouding the yard in ghostly layers. I opened the back door, and Buddy slipped outside, paws silent against the wet grass. Usually, he'd trot back after a few minutes, ready for breakfast. But this morning, he froze at the fence again. I leaned against the doorway, coffee in hand, watching him. His ears twitched, and his body tensed like a bowstring. The fog seemed to swallow sound, but then, a faint rustle came from beyond the fence. Buddy's head jerked toward it. "Buddy," I called, my voice sharp enough to carry. He didn't move. The rustle grew louder. Then came a sound I'd never heard before. Not quite a growl, not quite a howl, but something in between. Buddy bolted. "Buddy!" I shouted, but it was too late. He leapt at the fence, claws scraping against the wood, and squeezed through a gap near the ground. I set my coffee down so fast it sloshed over the rim, grabbed my jacket and ran. The air was colder past the fence, the ground uneven. I followed the sound of his bark, which echoed strangely in the trees. The fog thickened, blurring my sense of distance. I called his name again, voice cracking with panic. In response came another bark, shorter this time, edged with something that made my stomach knot. The ground was littered with unfamiliar tracks. They weren't dog prints. They were longer, the toes sharp, claw tips digging deep into the earth. Something had been here, something bigger than Buddy. Branches whipped my face as I pushed deeper. I could hear him now, but the tone of his barking had changed. It was defensive, urgent. I broke into a run. And then, from somewhere ahead, A sharp yelp tore through the stillness. My legs moved faster than my mind. I didn't know what was waiting, only that I had to get to him. Section 3. Confrontation and Discovery. The forest swallowed light. Even the fog seemed dimmer here, clinging to twisted roots and low branches. I slowed my pace, scanning the shadows until my eyes adjusted. Then I saw him. Buddy stood rigid, hackles raised, teeth bared in a snarl I'd never seen from him before. His gaze was locked on something just beyond a cluster of trees. I followed his line of sight, and my breath caught. A shape moved in the mist. Too tall for a dog, too lean for a bear. Its eyes glinted faintly, reflecting what little light broke through. My instincts screamed to back away, but my feet stayed planted. The creature stepped forward, and the details sharpened. Long limbs, mottled fur, and claws that looked sharp enough to carve into bark. Its movement was deliberate, predatory. Buddy growled low, his body positioned between me and the thing. I took a step toward him, my voice barely above a whisper. "Easy, boy. I'm here." The creature's gaze flicked to me, then back to Buddy. The air felt electric, like the charged moment before storm breaks. And then, from deeper in the woods, came a sound, a piercing whistle. Not animal. Human. The creature froze, its head jerking toward the sound. It stepped back once, then again, until it was swallowed by the mist. Just before it vanished, I thought I saw movement behind it, the outline of a person standing still watching. I wanted to follow, to demand answers, but Buddy's trembling body brought me back. His breathing was fast, and I noticed a small scratch along his side. I crouched, running my hands over him. Nothing serious, but it was enough. "Let's go home," I murmured, though the words felt hollow. My mind stayed on that shadow, that whistle, those glinting eyes. As we made our way back through the trees, I couldn't shake the feeling we hadn't just stumbled into danger. We'd been allowed to leave it. Section 4. Reflection and Change. Back at home, the warmth of the kitchen felt almost unreal after the damp cold of the woods. I cleaned Buddy's side, speaking to him softly as he sat, still alert, eyes fixed on the window. He limped slightly but otherwise seemed fine. Still, the way he kept glancing toward the backyard unsettled me. It was as if he expected something or someone to follow. That evening the neighborhood was buzzing. More pets had gone missing overnight. A few people claimed they'd seen something moving through the trees at the edge of town. One woman swore she'd heard a whistle in the middle of the night. I thought about the fence. For years it had been a simple border, a way to keep Buddy safe, to mark what was ours. But now it felt like a line drawn between two worlds, one I understood and one I didn't. Buddy seemed changed too. He stayed closer to me, but his eyes were always scanning, ears twitching toward the slightest sound. It wasn't fear. It was vigilance. A few days later, I stood with him at the fence. The sun was setting, painting the trees in long shadows. Buddy's tail was still, his gaze fixed on the same spot where he'd first crossed. I looked too, half expecting to see those glinting eyes in the dark. We stood there together for a long time, saying nothing. Some boundaries are meant to keep danger out. Others are meant to keep you from finding it. That day, Buddy had crossed both, and in doing so, he'd shown me just how thin the line really was. I reached down and scratched behind his ears. His eyes softened for just a moment, but his attention never left the trees. Somewhere out there something waited, and Buddy, I could tell, was ready for it.